Before we go any further, I'm going to be discussing a few things that is important for you to know before you begin this class. This class is not for absolute beginners. I'm not going to teach here video editing, or I'm not going to go through all the tools available in color grading panel. If you want to learn DaVinci Resolve that way, then I've made an in-depth tutorial about DaVinci Resolve. It's like a 7 hours long class, and that would teach you everything about DaVinci Resolve. But in this class, we are just going to be learning some specific techniques to get you that cinematic look. In the first few sections, we would be editing from all the tools which is available in DaVinci Resolve free version. There are also some Luts which is provided in the free version. We're going to be using that to create some beautiful looks. That would be in the first section. In the second section, I'm going to be using DaVinci Resolve Studio version, which is the paid version, and show you how to achieve cinematic look in a super easy way. So if you're a studio version, you really should be watching those classes. And if you are a free version, that is a good chance for you to convince yourself that you might need studio version. And in the last section, I'm going to be using an external plugin for color grading called Dehancer Pro. It all sounds really complicated. It also did for me, but it is a plugin which is from an external source, so you need to install that in DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to show you how, and once you install it and once you use that for color grading, it's going to change everything. I've been using Dehancer Pro for the last couple of months, and like the film looks that I get within a few clicks, it is just unbelievable. So Dehancer Pro is of course a paid plugin that you can also use on studio version. I tried that free trial for 2 weeks and I was convinced that I need the studio one. So I would really encourage you to try out with me, because I'm going to be color grading 2 to 3 clips using Dehancer Pro. So yeah, these were the 3 sections on which I've divided this entire class. So if you're ready now, then let's get started with color grading in DaVinci Resolve. So here we go. We're going to be starting to edit color grading in DaVinci Resolve. So first thing first, of course, you open DaVinci Resolve here. I have the Studio 20, the DaVinci Resolve 20 version, but whatever I'm teaching, you can do the exact same things in DaVinci Resolve 19 as well. So I already have this project open, so I'm just going to open it. And I have a new timeline here because you can see that there's nothing on this timeline. And all these clips, whatever you are seeing here now, that's all provided in the description. So really don't worry about that. As I'm dragging the clip, you can also drag the clip in your timeline. But before going any further, the most important thing, what you should be doing while color grading in DaVinci Resolve, is going to the project setting and then changing the color management. So if you haven't changed it, you should change the color science to DaVinci YRGB, and then you should uncheck it, use separate, just leave it there. Then timeline color space is DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate. So you have a lot of options, select this. This would be really important in the coming sections, and yeah, I'll let you know why. Then output color space is Rec 709 Gamma 2.4. This is the most common color space in which you see all the videos online. So that's the color space we're going to choose. And one thing I would really like to mention, especially for Mac users, is this. So this setting, what I just told you now, it is really good for Windows, but if you're a Mac user and if you want super accurate output on your laptop screen and on your iPhone, then you need to choose this setting. So we chose Rec 709 Gamma 2.4. What you need to choose is Rec 709A. And that would give you super accurate colors while exporting the files. I would cancel it because that is my default setting. So if I just press the setting button, this is how it opens. And if you want to use this setting every time you open the computer, and if you don't want to forget it, what you can do, go to the 3 dots here, and then you can do save current setting as, not as a preset, but save the current setting as default preset. So every time you open your Mac or your Windows, you would have whatever settings you have chosen now, that would be the settings saved every time you open your Mac. And also for Apple users, there is one more setting that you need to keep in mind. What you need to do, go to DaVinci Resolve here in the corner, go to Preferences. Once the Preferences is open, you go to General. And in general, you have to select use 10-bit, select this one, turn it on, toggle this one on as well, use Mac display for color profiles for viewers. And this one is really important, automatically tag Rec 709 scene clips as Rec 709A. Once you have these settings selected, then you get super accurate colors. So the first clip, what we're gonna drag is one of my favorite clips. I'm just gonna check here in the clip section. So this is the clip. I'll drag it down here. And if you have no clue what am I doing in the edit page, then really go check out my full on DaVinci Resolve class where I have taught everything from scratch. So if you're a beginner, like really beginner, then you should check out that course. But here what I would be doing is I'm just gonna see, where the clip is useful, and then I'll just crop it here. And we are in the edit page now. So let's go into the color grading page. So if your color grading page doesn't look like this, then you should be going on the right hand side. Then you should be checking the parade here. And if you go to this arrow, you check the parade. You might have waveform, you might have vector scope. I would keep it to parade. And if you just have red, green, and blue, what you can do, you can go to this settings panel. Then you can choose YRGB. So you can also do RGB, but I choose YRGB because this section shows me the luminance or the brightness or the shadows of the entire image. And then at parade, you can also, increase or reduce the opacity of these graphs. So I would just leave it like that. And then this side, you should have the primary color wheels or HDR or these kind of panels on this side. And on the right hand side top, you would have all the stills, what you have. Like I'll go through everything, so don't worry about that. You have some stills, you have some power grade, you have some timeline clips. But anyways, let's get rid of this gallery so we have more workspace to work with. And this is how my image looks here. So this would be the master frame. A master frame is something where you choose the most important frame in the image. So here we're going to be making some new nodes. How do you make new nodes? You can press Command S or Control S for Windows, Command S for Mac. And in the first node, what you need to do, so now this is a normal image. This is not a log image. It looks like a normal picture profile. What we need to do is we need to convert this picture profile into log picture profile because we're going to be using some Luts which are only applicable to log picture profile. So what we're going to be doing is if you select the first node, really important. This step should be always on the first node. We go to effects and then we go to color space transform. So I'm just going to drag and drop here. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to leave everything the same, but in output gamma, we would do Cineon film log because the Luts what we're going to be using is only applicable on Cineon film log clips. And once we have changed the output gamma to Cineon film log, you also should go here, change it to Rec 709. Now you can see that the clip is really desaturated. Output color space Rec 709 as well. And then input gamma, the gamma what we choose before was 2.4. So I think it should be there, gamma 2.4. And then we're going to get rid of the effect. So what we are doing basically now is that we are preparing our clip for the LUT, what we're going to be putting in DaVinci Resolve. So this is, say, color space transformation. So I'm just going to label it CST. And then what we're going to be doing is you go to the last node. So this is always a process. First, you do color space transform, bring the footage to whatever profile you want. Sometimes it's the other way. Sometimes you bring the footage from log to Rec 709, for it to be normal looking. But here we are changing the Rec 709 image, a normal colorful image, to log for our LUT. And you might be really surprised that some of the LUTs, like film LUTs, are available in DaVinci Resolve for free. So how we can access that? You go here, and then if you just scroll down to film looks, this would be available to anyone. If you're a studio version, free version, it would be available to anyone. You're just gonna make some space here. And if you want this to be, fit the screen here, you just press Z. Here we have some Luts. We have Rec 799 Kodak 2383. Look at this, how it looks. So you just hover the cursor on the LUT and you can already see how your image would be. So you see with like just the inbuilt DaVinci Resolve LUT, you can get look like this. I think I really like the Rec 799 Fujifilm 351 because it gives that cool look. You can also go for warm look if you want to use the Kodak LUTs, but I think I would go for this. I think they all look good. That's the whole thing about beautiful LUT pack, is that you would be so confused which LUT to use, but I would still go with this because I really like the nice and cool look and it really looks cinematic. So we're just gonna get rid of the LUT. So yeah, that's how you can have cinematic look in DaVinci Resolve. No, I'm just kidding. We can do a lot of things on this image as well. So if I could just go before and after, because I really like it, it's just so satisfying. If I just disable everything, which is Command D, this was before and this is after. So how many steps was it? 1 and 2. So just in 2 steps, you can achieve beautiful cinematic look. You can leave the image here, but we are not done here. So I would keep the image to the master frame, and here in the next to the color space transformation node, I would start changing the image a little bit according to my taste. So this could be really subjective. Also choosing the LUT can be really subjective. It's really up to you which look you're going for. But here what we're gonna do, we're gonna be changing some exposure because I have a feeling that like this area, it looks a bit harsh. And also these lights are a bit too harsh. And I also think that the shadows, it's a bit too much shadows. I don't know, we'll see. That's what I feel now, but once I change it, then I would know that maybe this was better or the next previous was better. So here we're gonna be changing the exposure. So when I started editing in DaVinci Resolve, I was always changing the exposure with primary color wheels. They were good, but the problem with primary color wheels is that if you want to change just the darks, that also kind of changes the lighter part of the image as well. And that's why I choose the HDR color wheels now, because that gives me a bit more flexibility in exactly what part I need to expose. And you can also go right or left because there are so many of these circles like that, and each circle has a point. So if I just go on black and if I just click this, then it would show that which area it's going to affect. In this image, none. And if I go dark, then you can see that all the dark areas, if you do anything with dark, it's going to affect all the just the darker areas. If I just change the color like this, it would only affect that area. I would just reset it. Same with shadows. If I go shadows here, everything which is highlighted, that is in the shadows. So if I change the color of the shadows, you can see that the only thing which is highlighted, the color of that thing is changing. But we are not here to change the color, we are here to change the exposure. So to reduce the harshness on the image here, what we're going to be doing is you just go click here, then you have this highlight panel. What we're going to be doing is if I go here, then you can see that this face here lies in the highlight panel. So we're going to be reducing the exposure of the highlight. And you can already see that we retain a lot of information in the skin of the subject. So if I go say full screen and if I go before, you see how overlighted and how harsh it was, the light. And then I reduced it with the highlight panel. And then with the light, I would leave it. I think the shadows are a bit too much, so maybe I will increase the shadows. Maybe I regret it later, I don't know. Oh, not X, you have to increase the exposure. So you can go like that, or you can also just leave it here. Probably about this. So this was before, and this is after. Before and after. That looks kind of good to me. I would also maybe want to increase the exposure of this entire image. And how do you do that is by going to the global wheel and changing the exposure here. So that's going to lift the exposure of the entire image. Maybe I'll reduce the highlights a little bit. Now increase them a little bit so that it's not too harsh. I think exposure is a bit too much. So let's go full screen before and after. So you can see that what we did was we reduced the highlights, we reduced the intensity of the brighter areas, which was these lights, the face here, and we increased the brightness of the darker areas. This was just to bring the image in a normal looking plane. That was good. And here what I would be doing is contrast. In this image, I don't think contrast is needed because everything already looks like it's kind of peaking. So if you see the graph here, you can already see that the brighter areas are at their brightest. The darker areas are at their darkest. So I wouldn't touch contrast, maybe in the future, but let's not touch it there. Here, what I can do. Here, I can also change. Remember, I told you that I really like the cool look, but what if I want to make it even cooler? Then what I would be doing is I go here and then in the global section, I'm just gonna drag this thing to a bit more cooler side. So let's go full screen. This is before, this is after. I really like this. Maybe a little bit less. Before and after, before and after. But here, what I personally think is that the skin is now becoming also a little bit bluish. It's not too intense, but I would like to retain the skin color to be a bit more warm. So for that, what I would be doing is I can either add a serial node or I can also add a parallel node. So I would just go add node parallel. And here in this node, whatever I'm going to be changing, that wouldn't affect what I changed here. That is, the information is coming from this node. So here I need to change the color of the skin. So to have a perfect skin color, what you need to do, go to parade, go to vector scope. And here in this scope, I'll show you something. If I go in the curves, if I go to hue versus hue curves, and if I just select the skin on the face, which lies here, and if I drag this up or down, you can see the change in the graph here. So you can see it's going like this, like this. But you might be wondering, what is this line? If you don't have this line, what you should do, go to settings and show skin tone indicator. So if our skin color lies on this line, most of the time it shows a really good skin color. So that's what my goal is here is now. I'm just gonna drag it until the line, until this point. You see this point is a bit shifted until this point goes on this line. So I'm just gonna go up to add more warmth in the image. And I think maybe it's a bit too red, so I'll just go down. This looks pretty good. So if I go before and after, it just adds a little bit of redness, a little bit of warmth in the skin. You see, it adds a little bit of, gives a bit more life in the skin. This is also really subjective. You can choose it to have it or not have it. So that looks pretty good. And here, if I just get rid of these two nodes, you can see how much change we made. So this was warm, which it was fine, but I just wanted to change something. So this is a bit more cool tone. Now the image is looking really good. So if I just disable everything, you can also disable everything by Option D or Alt D. But if I do that, because I'm using this cursor app, which is showing the yellow thing around the cursor, that kind of enables. So what I would be doing is I will just select all the nodes and then disable that. This was before. Let's go full screen. It's so satisfying to work. This was before. This is after. Now, there's something else which is bothering me is that our subject is here. Like usually in the image, the subject should be the center of focus. And here in this image, what I think is that like this whole area is super bright. So to take care of that, what I'm going to do is I would add another node, Option S, and then here I can just do, say, blue and skin. Here we're going to be taking care of this bright area. So what we can do is you go to the Windows panel here, and then you choose gradient. What gradient does is that, I'm just going to zoom out. It helps me to make changes to the area which is visible in the screen. So this area is not visible, so whatever change I'm going to make on this node, that would be only applicable to this area. So next thing, yeah, you know what I'm going to do. So I would just reduce the exposure of this area. And how you can reduce the exposure of the entire area is very simple. You go here to curves, go to the main curve here, custom curve, and then we can just pull it down here. I'm going a bit too aggressive, but then what you can also do is that you go to Windows tool and make it a bit more soft. So if I just make it a bit more soft, you know, so that it doesn't look like one line, I think that looks pretty good. So if we do, say, full screen before and after, before and after, as you can see, we are just making change in here. And that kind of helps me to focus more on the subject. So yeah, in my opinion, that it looks pretty nice. So this was the image. We can also go full screen and see, do before and after. So I'm just going to select everything. This was the image. This is before, just a normal looking image. This is after. And now if we want to, you know, save the same effect and we want to put it on the next clip, you can just go grab still, and that would be saved in the gallery here. I already have a few other things saved in the gallery, but that I'm going to be showing you later. In this section, we're going to be using a tool which is only available in the studio version. Here, we're going to be color grading with a tool, an inbuilt tool in DaVinci Resolve Studio called Film Look Creator. And that gives cinematic look instantly. So let's choose, this file is also with you. So let's choose this file here. What I would also do is maybe zoom in a little bit because I just feel that the subject is a little bit too far. Maybe like that, something like that. This looks like a really decent framing. So then I would go to the color grading page. And here we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be making two nodes. The first node would be, it's the exact same process every time. So what you can also do is something really cool, which I learned way later in my career. So what you can do, this was shot in Sony Gamma S3, Sony S-Log, and then here we would be doing the DaVinci Resolve Intermediate, and in the other panel, in the other node, we would be doing the output. We have the DaVinci Resolve Wide Gamut, DaVinci Resolve Wide Intermediate. This was in Rec 709, and this is also in Rec 709. Output gamma, we would be doing, oh, I've chosen Cinearc. That shouldn't be Cineon. It should be like that. Output gamma, you can also just choose 2.4. It's not going to make any difference because, yeah, if you choose Rec 709 or 2.4, it's the same. So here, you know, this process we are doing every time of converting everything and then using two nodes, what we can do is if you go to gallery here, under the gallery, you would have these stills. You know, the stills are the things what we copy from one footage to another, the settings. But if you go to a new project, these stills are gone, right? What you can do, if I do grab still, we have this process in this still with two nodes, the process which we have to do on every Sony file or every Canon file. If you're a Canon user, you can do the conversion LUT with Canon. What we can do, we can drag this still to Power Grade. And what happens now is that if you open a new project, for example, if I open, say, Apple ProRes, this project, and then if I have to do the exact same process on this clip, if this clip was like this, you go to Power Grade and we just copy this file. So what we had the settings chosen in the other project, you can just copy it. It's exactly same as the power bins, what we have in the edit page. So let's go back to our project. So we have it here. So now if you import any Sony file in any video project, you can just go to Power Grade and copy this setting on the Sony file, because that's what you have to do anyways. Now, once we are done converting the file from log to Rec 709 with this method, you can still see that there's a lot of room to play around because the footage still looks a bit boring. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using an inbuilt tool called Film Look Creator. So you just need to go to Effects and then search for Film Look. Search for Film Look, and then we have Film Look Creator. So what you can do is just drag and drop on the last file. And now you would see that the footage looks really bad. What we should be doing now is that you go to Clean Slate, and that clean slate is kind of disabling everything. What we need to do here, we don't really have to touch anything yet. Okay. Here we don't have to do any conversion because we have already done the conversion. This is where the things start to take a turn. We go to Film Look Blend. So there is a core look called Cinematic. So if you just increase it, then you can see that something is changing. The footage is becoming a bit desaturated, but let's keep it 100%. We just need to see how it looks. And then from Cinematic, you can choose different types of Luts, you can say, or different types of filters. So let's leave it to Vintage. And what we're going to be doing is, I have a feeling that the saturation of the clip is not the best. So what we're going to be doing is, let's disable this first. Yeah. Let's do the exposure and saturation and all that sort of stuff first. Let's take care of that. Because sometimes I do the other way around, that if I have the cinematic look, then I change the exposure, because even if I have the exposure, saturation, everything good, and if I put the cinematic look, the exposure needs to be changed. So then it's double work. But yeah, maybe let's do it this way, that we have the cinematic look on and we can just keep these two clips here. And then we're going to be just playing around with exposure and other things now. So let's take care of exposure. We have we're going to be reducing the shadows now. We can also, there's not much to just reduce the highlight so that the skin tones are a little bit back. So everything looks good here. And if you disable it, let's see what changes we made. Everything looks good here, but I feel like this image is lacking a bit of contrast. I also think that I have reduced the highlights a little bit too much. So to increase the contrast, we have to play around with lift gamma gain. So I'll just increase the gain until it's not really peaking out. So I go until here, and then we're going to be bringing the lifts down, and we have to make sure that nothing goes below 0. So the blacks are looking black. The image doesn't really look faded out. So this is what we did after contrast. You see how nice the image looks. This look already looks really nice. But what we need to do is we need to make it a bit more cinematic. So I'll just push it up. But then what I would do here, I would just go to exposure and reduce the highlight, because I have a feeling that her skin is blowing out. So just bring back the information in the skin. Maybe it's a little too much. Just keep it that way and reduce the exposure. So these things, you don't get right everything in one go. You have to really play around with the clip and then see how it looks. Because there's no hard and fast rule that with one image you have to go with gain 1.22, gamma -3, and lift -3. You have to really play around to see how it looks actually. And then we're going to be turning on the Film Look Creator, and then we see how it looks. It's still looking a bit desaturated, but let's not worry about that. Let's worry about the saturation. So we're going to be doing the same thing how we did with the saturation. If we go to color space, HSV, and then gamma, we have to select the channels. We have to select the, oh, not unselect, select the channel 2 and deselect the other ones. Channel 2. So we increase the saturation. So see how organically it increases the saturation. Now the skins and the greens are looking just so beautiful. This was all faded out. This is looking so nice. So if we disable the 3 clips, this was how my image was after conversion from Sony log to Rec 709, and this is how it is after we did the color correction. And now what we're going to be doing is, now we go to the cinematic node and see what's going on here. So I can see that it looks fine, but I also feel that it's a little bit too intense, the look. So we're going to be going halfway, or maybe just go this full, and then the global blend, what we would be doing is just go to half. So now if you just select and deselect, it gives that bit of a dramatic look, but we have a lot of other things to play around. So we can play around with the skin bias, so that would change the intensity of the skin. So you can see if I go up, it kind of increases the brightness of the skin. And then contrast and these things, I wouldn't change it here. I would just change it in the DaVinci itself with the other tools. Split tone I would change, so you'd go enable split tone, and this kind of changes the color of the skin and also changes the color of the background, so that there is a lot of difference between the skin and the background, or the reds or the greens, so that now you can separate the subject. But what you can do, if we disable, enable, you can see the difference in the skin color. But what you can do now, you can change the colors of the entire scene with hue angle. See, if I go like this, now it's a bit more greenish, bluish. So if I just keep it here and reduce the amount, and if I just enable or disable it, that already looks quite nice. Vignetting, we're going to be doing it later. Halation you can do. So halation would be this a little bit of gloom effect. Or halation, we can also do it in DaVinci Resolve itself. So we're going to be disabling it. I will show you later. Bloom we can do now. So bloom sort of gives a little bit of bloom effect. It's not showing now because this image is not the best to show the bloom example. So let's leave bloom here. Let's leave flicker here. And global blend, we reduce it to half. And if you go to Rochester, you can choose different color tones. So this is how the image would look to our normal eyes. It's a bit more commercial look. And this is how if you do some cinematic look. But what we can also do now is that we had this cinematic, the film look node, right? Now what you can do is you can change the colors of the things here. So what we would be doing is, if we want, I think we did that in the last section as well, that if we want a dramatic look, let's make it a bit more bluish, so we can move the offset, or we can also make it a bit more sort of dramatic summer vibe. A lot of movies, they use this kind of color grading, so you can see just with moving the offset a little bit, it brings the colors like this. And you might be thinking that there's not much use of film look now, but if you disable the film look, you see how weird it looks. But if you enable it, it gets that really soft film look texture. So that is why film look is really cool in DaVinci Resolve. Let's copy this setting and then use it in some other video file. So if I have another video file, let's go here, let's copy this video file as well. And then let's go to gallery. We're going to be copying this clip. Let's get rid of it. So you see how nice it looks without the film look, with the film look. And what I also feel that my subject is a little bit dark. He should be a bit overlighted. So what I would be doing is I would just go yellows. I mistyped it, but yeah, I'll just leave it that way. So here what I would be doing is I would be increasing the shadows, increasing the shadow just here on my subject. So what we would be doing now is we would be magic masking my subject. So if you go to Magic Mask Tool, if you go to Magic Mask Tool, if you could go to the beginning of the clip, What we need to do, and this is only available in the studio version, so what we need to do, we need to select the subject. So if you're using DaVinci 20, then you would have these dots, but if you were using DaVinci 19, then you can draw a line on the subject. And I have 3 dots, but I don't know what is selected, so then I need to click this button. So then I see that everything which is red is selected. What I can also do is go to better here, so that would make the entire process a bit slower, but then it would select just my subject. And if my subject is selected, then I can do any change in the selected area, which is the subject, of course. And what we can also do now is, I would also want it to select the bicycle here. And then everything is good. We can do simple refine, increase the simple refine a little bit. So you see here the tree is also being selected, so you can, negative selector tool and get rid of the tree. And now if I press Z, the subject and the bicycle is selected. And what I need to do, just play this. This would take a little bit time because we have chosen the better, not faster. So now what DaVinci is doing is DaVinci is going through each frame of that small clip, and it is choosing just the subject. And once our subject is chosen in that clip, then we can make changes just in the subject. Because my subject was a little bit dark, I thought, according to the surroundings. And our tracking is done. So what I would be doing now is that I would disable this, the toggle mask overlay, so then the reds are gone. And then if I make any changes, for example, if I just make it bright, it would only make the subject bright and the bicycle bright. But what I need to do now is I need to increase the shadows. I think that would help, or maybe also the global blend so that the whole subject gets a little bit brighter. So if I go full screen, this is after, before, you see how much difference we have made in the subject. And if we go from the beginning, I also feel that the subject is, the highlights is a little bit too high, so I would just reduce it here. Let's go full, and you see how much difference we make. Because the surrounding is already so overlighted, so I need to make sure that the subject was of kind of the same exposure and the whole focus goes on the subject. And what we would be doing now is, I can see that this area is a little bit too bright. So what I would be doing is, I would just go to window tool, go to gradient, and you can just do like this. We can see what is being selected, and to reduce the exposure, what we did was we went to custom curve, just pull it from the center. So you can see full screen, this was before and after. Maybe this can, maybe we can change the angle of the thing a little bit, because I have a feeling that the light is coming from the top, but it is falling on the floor. So before and after, you can see how much difference it is now. That's crazy. So this was my clip before, this is after. So you can see just with playing around with few tools, we have gotten such a cool look. And yeah, the film look was a champion in this chapter. So you can see this was without film look, this is with film look. So just an overview of what we did. We started with converting the footage from Sony log to Rec 709. We didn't use the Cineon film log because the film look, what we are using now, is applicable to Rec 709 footage, a normal looking footage. Once we had the Rec 709, then we changed the look to film look. We did some changes in the film look, and that gave us a kind of cinematic look, but a little bit desaturated. So to make the footage still a little bit punchy, we changed the exposure here. We changed the contrast, so that the brights are brights and the darks are darks. Then we changed the saturation, because the saturation was a bit too less when we put the film look. So we changed the saturation. Then we made the whole image a little bit yellow, because I just wanted to give a bit of summer vibe to the image, because now it just looks like a commercial clip. I just changed the yellows with, increase the warmth with the offset tool in the primary color wheels. And then next what we did was we we magic masked the subject to make the subject a little bit brighter. And once we had the entire image ready, then I thought that the subject is still looking a little bit too dark as compared to the surroundings. Then we changed the brightness of the surroundings. And this is our final image. So you see, just with using a few tools. After the film look, we can use another tool which is just available in the studio version, and I use it all the time, is the Halation Tool. So Halation Tool, what they do is that they kind of, yeah, it's really hard to explain. You have to see it. So, and if I do full screen, it kind of brings this a softer look to the image, and it also has this red kind of lighting effect in the brighter area. So this is before and after. So that gives a soft and dreamy look. For some of you, this might be a bit too much. So what we can do is, if you have the Halation tool here, you can reduce the strength. So now if we have reduced the strength, we go full screen, there's a subtle change. So if you see on the edges of the subject, there's a subtle change in the image. I love this tool. So what I do usually is I just change the strength. I don't do anything else. And if we want to use the same settings on the previous clip, I'll just copy the Halation tool, go in the clip here that we changed. So you have to place the Halation tool in the end because that's what we want, that we want the Halation overlay on the final product. So I'll just paste it here. So you don't see a lot of difference here because here there's no sunlight falling on the subject, but you might have to increase the strength to really see the effect. So if we go here on towards the hair of the subject, then you can see that there's a bit of bright areas. So if we go full screen, it gives that soft look on the edges of the subject. See this before and after. A lot of people, they ask me, how do you get the dreamy cinematic look on your image? And Halation tool is the secret. So yeah, and Halation tool is only available in the studio version. So if you're not using studio version, this might be the only reason to buy studio. Like, yeah, I use it all the time. And one more tool. I also use it every time, is the film grain. So film grain is, if I just zoom in on her t-shirt, you don't really see much, but if I just go the opacity of the grain to a bit too much, then you see, and then you can also change the grain. I usually use the 35, no, I use the 8mm 50D. So what happens is that if I go before, you can see the image was a bit normal, looking like digital. And if you go after, then you have this grainy image. But it can be a good effect in some cases, but you can also just reduce the intensity to make it not too intense. I don't know if you can see in the screen recording, but you have to really try it for yourself in your system to see the effects of the grain. So that is how you can also make the footage a little bit more appealing, a bit more cinematic by adding the halation and adding the grain. And now we're going to be moving on to the next section. Now let's talk about a tool which I recently discovered, and it is, I think, one of the best tools to get cinematic look in any video editing software. But the problem is it's not a problem, the situation is that it is an external plugin. What external plugin means is that you have to download it from some other website, and then you have to install that in DaVinci Resolve. And once you install that, then it would be there in DaVinci Resolve. And if you see the film emulation tool, which is a tool which helps you to achieve the film look, it's here, Dehancer Pro 7.3.0. How you can install it, if you go to the description, it is clearly, because I already have it. I already have the paid version, so I cannot really show you how you can install the free version. But if you go to the description, there would be a link saying how to install Dehancer Pro. This Dehancer Pro, it is a paid tool, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend to use at least the first 2 weeks trial and see how you feel like. And once you are impressed by that, then you can buy it. If you're not impressed by that, you don't have to buy it. You can still use the free tools. They're still great. But yeah, I use it for 2 weeks and now I am using it in every video project if the goal is to achieve a cinematic look. So I would recommend you to pause this video, go to the description, download Dehancer and install Dehancer in the DaVinci Resolve. You can also install it in the free version, so it's totally fine. But yeah, really follow that video which is provided, and once you have it installed, then come back to me. Okay, so I hope that you have installed Dehancer. Here, let's go. So how to use Dehancer tool. So what we would be doing is we're just going to use it on a normal video. It's like a Rec 709 video. It's not in any lot profile. So usually you do all the changes in the beginning, like every other videos, and then you put the film emulation tool in the end. So we just go to Dehancer, and I would just drag and drop here on the software. So like every film emulation tool, as soon as you import it, the footage looks a little bit weird. So what we need to do, you go scroll all the way down and then you do disable all tools. And that would uncheck all the tools. And what you also need to do is you go to high and slow. So the quality would be good, but then the playback of the footage would be a little bit slower. That's the only demerit of Dehancer. Let's go to the first tool. Here you can choose the source Rec 709 because our image is in Rec 709. So here we have this. We don't need to change anything in the exposure here because it's best to change the exposure with the DaVinci Resolve tools, not the Dehancer. Here, first thing I do is I go to film compression. I enable it, and as soon as I enable it, it kind of really preserves the brighter areas. If I go before, you see, it was a bit too bright. Now it's a little bit softer, a little bit film-like. As I mentioned before, if you see any film videos, they're not super overlighted. The brighter areas are bright, but not super, super bright, not crazy punchy. First thing I do is here, but you don't see that much effect in this shot, but in the upcoming sections, I'm going to be showing you that how much film compression affects an image. Once we are done with that, then if I scroll down, I go to print. And with print, you can select either Fujifilm or Kodak look. If I do that, nothing happens because it's not enabled. If I enable it, you can see that how crazy it looks with just one click. So I've chosen the Kodak 2383 film print. In DaVinci free Luts as well, they had Kodak for 2383. But the look was not as good as this. Or if you want to choose Fujifilm, that also, I think the Fujifilm looks really great. So you see, just by using two tools, it already looks so cool. If you show this footage to someone who doesn't know about Dehancer, they would ask you, how did you color grade? They would think that you are this professional colorist. But in reality, you just need a Dehancer tool and then it's all good to go. Here, what you can do, I wouldn't change anything in this case. I would go again up and then film developer. I wouldn't choose anything here again because everything, the contrast boost, gamma separation, color boost, we can do all of this in DaVinci Resolve. So I just don't want to make your life complicated. So input also, we can close it. And now what we would be doing is Dehancer, we chose the Fujifilm print. So that gave a look to the image. Now we have, you can say Luts. We have thousands of different, not thousands, we have so many Luts available what you can put on top of the Fujifilm print. So if you go here, like every Lut is just, look at this, like how pretty it looks. Look how nice it looks. So you can choose any of these Luts. Sometimes these Luts can be a little bit too intense, but we're gonna take care of that. So there are so many of them. It's really subjective, like which person likes which Lut. I usually go for Kodak Supra, or I also do Kodak Vision 3. I also do this. With every footage, I just try it out and see which one looks good. But sometimes it's also really confusing because a lot of them are looking really nice. Let's do Fuji color. I like this look. I really like this look. And what you can also do is that you can do push pull EV, so that would kind of give another look, but I would just leave it in the center because this already looks nice. But if this whole thing is a bit too intense for you, you can reduce the opacity, but that we're gonna do later. The color head here, what you can do, you can change the color tones of the image. So if I just enable it, so nothing happens now, but if I go a bit more this side, the image becomes a bit yellow. If I go this side, the image becomes a little bit blue. You can same do with magenta or green. So yeah, you can play around with that, and you can also change the colors of the shadows. You can change the colors of the midtones. You can change the colors of the highlights. But I would just leave it as it is. Maybe the green, let's do before and after, before and after. The green looks kind of nice. And now is the film grain. So the film grain, what we used in the previous section, you can also use it here. But you don't have to use the DaVinci Resolve film grain. You can just use the Dehancer's film grain. So you can go enable, disable. That looks nice. Which one I usually use is 65 millimeter ISO 120. That gives a really subtle film grain look, which is not a bit too much. If I go all the way up to the amount 100, then it's like this. But I usually keep it to 62, 63. Still looks a bit too much, but just bear with me. And then we have halation as well. So I make it enable. So if I go enable and disable, you can see that there's a bit of glow here. And then the bloom effect, that also, you see, the bloom effect we were trying earlier in the DaVinci inbuilt tool, it was not doing that much. But if you see, if I just focus here, so if I just do the bloom effect on, you can see there's a little glow in the image that makes the image look so cool. I don't do film damage because that just doesn't make the footage look nice. I just don't touch it. But yeah, once you have the tool, just play around with that. I don't do any of this. I don't do nothing of this. Vignette, I also don't do it here because I can change all of this. I can make my own vignette in DaVinci, so I don't do it. What I do now is I can change the output. So for some of you, if it's too intense, you can still change the output. This was 0, this is 100. So I would just maybe do it until here. So this is before and after. You can see how cool it looks. But that is just Dehancer. You can still change the exposure, change everything. I wouldn't change everything. I would just change the saturation. So let's just go here, node label saturation. It's, yeah, I enjoy it so much using Dehancer. It's just, yeah. Like first I thought that, yeah, I'll just do a 2 weeks trial and then I would cancel it because it's not cheap. But if you are someone who's really serious about video editing, color grading, then you should really invest in it. So I would be just doing the saturation, changing the saturation a little bit. Because I don't really like the desaturated look in the videos. I still want the saturated look, to be there in the videos. So I would grab still. And then if we have another clip, let's say this one. So whatever settings are there, I'll just get rid of it. So this was the first clip we were editing. So I'll go in gallery and then I can just paste the settings here. So if we go before and after with the Dehancer, you can see this was just a normal looking image. You see how nice it looks with the film look. In some cases, in this case, to be honest, I feel like the grain is a little bit too much. So you can just go here, effects, reduce the grain. Once you know the tool, then you know where exactly everything is. I cannot really find the grain, but we're gonna find it. It's here. So you can just reduce the amount to, yeah, a little bit less. See how it looks before and after. And if I want to give any other look, saturation is there. And if I still want to give any other look, you can still do it. It's like if I want to make it a bit more colder, you can still do it. It's really not a problem. And the answer is in the end, before and after. So yeah, it's so cool that like getting a cinematic look has never been this easy. So I have this another clip. It's all provided in the description as well. So let's do Dehancer on this one. everything looks good. Maybe I will change the profile here. Let's do some Kodak look, Vision 300D. So you really have to play around with these tools. Now I think I really like the Kodak Porta. This is nice. But here what I feel is missing is a bit of contrast. So we're gonna add a bit of contrast. How you do it, you go gain up, 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 and then you go let's down, down, down. Look at this image, before and after. Grains are a bit too much. So what we're gonna be doing is we go to film grain here and reduce it to say 34. So cool. We go before and after. Really nice. And here you can just do anything, like anything, literally. If you want to change the color of the blues, you can still do it. If you want to, get this image a bit more punchy, a bit more commercial like, you can still do it. So yeah, like everything is possible in Dehancer. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to change the brightness of this image a little bit and then reduce the contrast a little bit more so it's still a bit more punchy. So you see how nice it looks. Also for this image, we can do some changes. You go to gallery, paste the Dehancer setting, what we had. And I have discovered what the problem is now. So this image, I thought that this image is in Rec 709, but in reality it is not, but it's still giving this look. So what we need to do, we need to disable the saturation. You need to disable this, and we need to change this image into Sony log. So what we can do is just reset everything. You go to gallery, you go to power grade because that's what we did before. Now this image is in a good pitch. That's what I thought, that there's a bit of, the image looks a bit more desaturated. The brightness is not that good. The exposure is not that good. But now we can bring Dehancer here on Sony log. And now you can see that now it looks so good. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going to the output, reduce it to half. And then everything looks good here. Code and vision, this Kodak color looks nice. But here what I would be doing is maybe do Fujifilm or Kodak. This looks also really beautiful. So you see, this was how my image was after converting it to Rec 709. This is after I put Dehancer. It's insane. Now if I want to increase the contrast a little bit more, before and after. I also feel that I want to change the color of this blue. So you can go here, just go to the custom curves, go to hue versus hue, select the blues here and bring it to hue. So you see, of course you can give that thin look with Dehancer, but you can still do a lot of other things after that. So what I want to do, because this scene is very similar to this scene, I would just copy the settings here and see how it looks. Look at this, it looks so good. The brightness is a little bit less, so what we're going to be doing is just increase the brightness a little bit. And then here we're going to be reducing the contrast. Maybe add another node. Before and after. So cool. So that's why you should invest in Dehancer. Like I have this the same bicycle clip. If I had the bicycle clip here, if I want the Dehancer on this one, just go gallery. I can paste the same setting. I can choose also not to, but I'll just do it just for the sake of this class, because you really have to play around yourself and see which setting looks really nice. Here, if you go to Dehancer, we can just try different color patterns and see what looks good. I think that looks already nice. And here we can, of course, increase the saturation brightness. So that was an introduction to Dehancer for you. And I would really recommend to just play around with it, because in my opinion, that is the easiest way to get cinematic look in DaVinci Resolve, whether it's a free version or paid version. And the look what you get is just, it looks so professional, and the amount of color grading knowledge you need to have to do that is barely nothing. So yeah, I think we are done with Dehancer. So that was it for this class. I hope you enjoyed it, or if you want, you can also color grade all the resource file that I provided in the description. And if you enjoyed this class, then don't forget to give a feedback. That really helps me to push this class to other students. If you have any questions, then tell me in the discussion panel. I would be really happy to answer all your questions, or you can just email me. All the information is provided in the description. And I will see you in the next class.